I have been aware of Akira's existence for quite some time. I remember seeing the DVD cover when I was younger at the local Blockbuster. It piqued my curiosity due to its animated style and its intimidating and aged look. However, I never picked it up mainly due to its age rating of 15, and I'm glad that I didn't pick it up, mainly as I would have been scared by its content, and I also can't imagine that I would have understood the plot and the themes either. But I finally sat down and watched Akira many years later. Does it live up to the immense hype surrounding it? What do I think? Well, that's for later. Akira is a 1998 two-hour-long cyberpunk dystopian movie which is adapted by the manga of the same name by Katsuhiro Emoto. It was also directed and written by Emoto and produced by Tokyo studio Shinsha. The year is 1998. A large explosion from an unknown source engulfs all of Tokyo and starts World War III. 31 years later, in the futuristic land of 2019, Neo-Tokyo has been rebuilt, but not to its previous state. Crime runs the street, and the rebels are engaged with a bloody war with an oppressive government. Kaneda is the leader of a biker gang with his friends Tetsuo and Yagamata. They ride along the streets at night, causing trouble and getting into fights with rival gangs. However, on one fateful night, a member of the gang, Tetsuo, has an encounter with a mysterious child who's escaped from the government. After crashing head-on with the small boy, Tetsuo receives injuries while the boy remains fine. Shortly after, the military catch up and detain the missing child while taking Tetsuo away to one of their hospitals. While Kaneda and his gang are helpless to watch. Tetsuo becomes a test subject after Dr. Onishi discovers his large potential for psychic powers, similar to that of a previous test subject, only known as Akira. From then on, the plot thickens as tension increases and the true actions of the government are truly known. I actually really enjoyed the plot for Akira. It's simple and fun and engaging story on the surface, but it actually portrays a lot more if you look into it enough, with themes like government alienation and the desire to play God, with the danger that it brings. It's portrayed clearly with enough focus on each subject without ruining the pacing of the film. There's a nice balance between the action and discussion, and I personally never felt that it dragged on. The world is also fully realized and quite detailed. Most of the time, in post-apocalypse stories, we see the direct aftermath, but it was a nice change to see a city recovering from that with a potential outcome, and the balance between anarchy and control in a world which has just recovered from the brink. The characters were varied as well. There's quite a large cast, with most of the main characters receiving an equal amount of screen time. Shotaro Kaneda is the protagonist, and is brash, arrogant, and reckless. He's the leader of a biker gang and enjoys the dangerous lifestyle. He's a product of the world he is in and lives in violence. But he can be a bit immature sometimes. But soon enough, serious events change him somewhat. For protagonist, I actually liked Kaneda. He was slightly generic in some areas, but on other occasions, he was interesting and just plain cool at some points. He kept the joy in most scenes he was in and was easily likable, making him easy to root for.
What's wrong?
Tetsuo Shima is definitely the main character of the story, or at least the main focus, even if he isn't the protagonist. He's a childhood friend of Kaneda, and he is also part of his gang, but feels that Kaneda doesn't treat him with enough respect, and resents while also depends on him. He's quiet and wants recognition. This all changes, however, after he's taken by the military. Tetsuo requires immense power and chooses to use it for his own gain, causing tension between him and Kaneda. I like Tetsuo's character. I felt as if he was the right mix of sympathetic and detestable. It's easy to understand why he acts the way he does due to his upbringing and the environment, but at the same time it became even harder to justify his actions as he went on. And finally, there's Colonel Shikishima, the head of the government project which experiments on Tetsuo and others. He's harsh, brutal, and desires for the ability for man to play a god, fully aware of the consequences of doing so. He was kind of like a second antagonist. I liked his character, though he was aware of all that was at stake, even if he did come across as a bit generic, though.
Come on!
I liked pretty much all the characters in Akira. They were varied, and one of the things I liked was how the location changed them. On a lot of occasions in apocalypse stories, people retain their morals before, or don't at all. But in this, characters really did seem to be a product of their environment. They'd be widely different in normal society, with probably the best example being Tetsuo. My only real problem is that most characters really only seem to have singular purposes and didn't change a whole lot throughout the story. However, this is understandable due to the time constraints of a movie compared to a full-length series. Animation is definitely a high point for Akira. One of Emoto's gripes with anime around the time was that many studios cut corners with common use of talking heads or rare movement. On Akira, it was the desire of him and others involved to make the animation amazing and add more to the characters in the world. And all I can say is, wow. The amount of detail in each frame is breathtaking, and the fluidity on each character, including the environment, is just as good considering each frame was hand-drawn. If Akira still looks this good nowadays, I can only imagine how good it would have looked back in 1998. Yes, it was done on 35mm film, but like other works such as Cowboy Bebop or Trigun, I think that this look works for Akira, and I just couldn't see it working using any other modern-day techniques. My only gripe with the animation, and have in mind this is a really small gripe, but the dialogue was created before the animation was drawn, so that in the Japanese sub, all of the, mouth flaps could move and match. However, this makes it so that in the English dub, it looks a bit awkward as the mouth flaps usually don't relate to anything that the characters are saying.
You cold bitch!
I also thought that the soundtrack was good as well. It consisted a lot of drums, vocals, and almost primitive sounding instruments, which, even though I've researched, I cannot for the life of me find the names of the instruments. It did what it was supposed to, offering emotion to when it was used. Maybe it stands as a metaphor for the primitive needs and emotions of people in this time? Or maybe I'm looking into it way too far. On the topic of sub versus dub, I say go with whatever you want. The copy I own is the 2001 re-release. Johnny Young Bosch plays a good Canada, even if it is within his usual acting range, and Joshua Seth makes a good Tetsuo. Everybody does well in sub and dub.
Screw you!
Overall, I really enjoyed Akira. I had a feeling going in before that it was going to be way overhyped. But through a use of narrative that can be examined or enjoyed, a variety of characters, and stellar animation, Akira is a good time guaranteed, and now I see why many like it. It isn't the best anime movie ever, but I definitely think it's up there, for me at least. But I can't think of anything that can realistically be changed about Akira that would improve it. Due to the time constraints of a movie, you also have only a certain amount of time to tell a story. Akira uses a lot within a small time frame, and it's all presented well. So some might say I'm being too kind, once again, but I give Akira a 10 out of 10.
What the hell do you call that?
Cornering, man. You got it, Tetsuo?